Have you ever noticed how the busier you become, the less you actually seem to accomplish anything meaningful? There's a reason for this, and once you see it, everything shifts. Let me show you what I mean. Right now, you're probably caught in what feels like an endless cycle of activity without achievement. Your days are packed with meetings, emails, tasks, and responsibilities that keep you constantly in motion. Yet when you look back at your week, you struggle to identify what you actually accomplish that moves you toward your important goals. You feel busy, even overwhelmed, but simultaneously unproductive and unfulfilled. Most people assume this disconnect between busyness and productivity is a time management problem that can be solved with better schedules, more efficient systems, or improved organizational tools. They download productivity apps, implement elaborate task management systems, and try to optimize every minute of their day, only to find themselves busier than ever, but no closer to meaningful achievement. What I'm about to share will completely transform your understanding of why this happens and reveal the hidden trap that keeps intelligent, hardworking people perpetually busy but chronically unproductive. You'll discover that the problem isn't that you're not working hard enough or that you need better time management skills. It's that you've been caught in a cultural delusion about what productivity actually means. By the end of our time together, you'll understand the crucial difference between motion and progress, between being busy and being effective, and between looking productive and actually creating value. You'll learn why the modern obsession with constant activity is the enemy of genuine accomplishment and how to escape the busyness trap to achieve real productivity that feels both satisfying and sustainable. Have you noticed how much of your day is consumed by activities that feel urgent and necessary in the moment, but when you step back and honestly assess them, contribute very little to your actual goals or long-term success? There's something happening beneath the surface that most of us miss because we're focused on managing our overwhelming to-do lists, rather than questioning why those lists are so overwhelming in the first place. Picture this. Your typical workday begins before you're even fully awake, checking emails and notifications that have accumulated overnight. You feel an immediate sense of urgency as you see the requests, updates, and small tasks that demand your attention. You tell yourself you'll just handle a few quick items before starting your important work. But those quick responses turn into longer conversations, which lead to additional tasks, which generate more emails requiring immediate responses. By mid-morning, you've been busy for hours, but haven't made any progress on the projects that actually matter for your career or personal goals. You attend a meeting that could have been an email, respond to emails that could have been ignored, and handle emergencies that aren't actually emergent. You're constantly in motion, always responding to something, perpetually engaged with activities that feel productive because they require effort and generate immediate feedback. This pattern continues throughout the day. You work through lunch while answering messages, attend another meeting where decisions get postponed, spend time organizing and reorganizing your task list, and handle a dozen small requests that each seem reasonable individually but collectively consume your entire day. By evening, you're exhausted from all this activity, yet frustrated because you feel like you haven't accomplished anything meaningful. This is the modern busyness trap. A state where you're constantly active but rarely effective, always in motion but seldom moving toward anything important. It's characterized by reactivity rather than intentionality, urgency rather than importance, and activity rather than achievement. Most people mistake this frantic motion for productivity because they've been conditioned to believe that being busy means being valuable. The deeper problem is that our culture has created what researchers call busyness addiction, a psychological state where people become dependent on constant activity to feel important, needed, and worthwhile. Being busy has become a status symbol, a way to signal importance and dedication. People wear their packed schedules like badges of honor and compete to be the most overwhelmed person in the room. This addiction to busyness creates a vicious cycle. The busier you become, the less time you have for strategic thinking about what's actually important. Without this reflection time, you default to reactive mode, responding to whatever demands your attention most loudly, rather than working proactively on what matters most. This reactive approach generates even more busyness as you deal with the consequences of not addressing important issues before they become urgent problems. Think of the difference between a hamster running frantically on a wheel and a person walking purposefully toward a destination. Both involve motion and effort, but only one results in meaningful progress. Most people have become hamsters, spinning faster and faster on the wheel of busyness while going nowhere. The cultural confusion between motion and progress has been exacerbated by technology that makes it easier than ever to stay busy. Smartphones ensure you're always accessible and always have something to respond to. Social media provides endless streams of content to consume. Digital tools create new ways to organize, optimize, and manage activities, often requiring more time to maintain than they save. Perhaps most insidiously, the busyness trap is often reinforced by immediate positive feedback. When you respond quickly to emails, people appreciate your responsiveness. When you attend every meeting, you're seen as engaged and committed. When you say yes to every request, you're valued as helpful and reliable. This positive reinforcement makes busyness feel productive even when it's actually preventing you from doing your most important work. The result is what psychologists call pseudo-productivity, the illusion of accomplishment that comes from completing many small, easy tasks while avoiding the more challenging but important work that would actually move you forward. You feel busy and therefore productive, but you're actually just busy and therefore distracted from what matters most. When you understand that busyness and productivity are not only different but often inversely related, you can begin to see why the hardest working people are often the least effective at achieving their most important goals. True productivity isn't about doing more things. It's about doing the right things with focused attention and clear intention. Let me tell you about a master craftsman in ancient Rome who was renowned throughout the empire for creating the most exquisite marble sculptures, despite working far fewer hours than other artisans in his workshop. While his colleagues worked from dawn to dusk, chiseling constantly and producing numerous pieces, the master would spend long periods simply observing his marble, contemplating his design, and preparing his tools before making a single cut. Young apprentices would often complain to the master about his seemingly lazy approach. "Master," one said, "the other sculptors create many sculptures while you work on just one. Shouldn't you be working faster and producing more to build your reputation and increase your income?" The master smiled and led the apprentice to the workshop where several artisans were busy creating standard decorative pieces for wealthy Romans. They worked with impressive speed and energy, chips flying constantly as they rapidly shaped their marble according to familiar patterns they had repeated hundreds of times. "Watch carefully," the master instructed. "What do you see?" "I see hard-working craftsmen who are very busy creating many beautiful pieces," the apprentice replied. "Look deeper," the master encouraged. "What is the quality of their attention? What is the level of their intention? How original is their work?" As the apprentice observed more carefully, he began to notice that despite all their activity, the busy artisans were essentially copying existing designs, working mechanically rather than creatively, and producing pieces that, while technically competent, lacked the soul and uniqueness that made art truly valuable. The master then led him to his own work area, where a single sculpture was taking shape, a piece of such extraordinary beauty and originality that it took the apprentice's breath away. Every curve seemed perfect, every detail appeared to flow naturally from the marble itself, and the overall effect was one of transcendent artistry. "This single piece," the master explained, "will be remembered and treasured for generations. It will command a price higher than all those busy pieces combined. More importantly, creating it has brought me deep satisfaction and has advanced my understanding of my craft in ways that mechanical repetition never could." Over the following months, the master taught the apprentice the difference between activity and accomplishment. He showed how the time spent in contemplation and preparation wasn't idleness, but essential work that enabled breakthrough creativity.
He demonstrated how focusing deeply on one important project produced far better results than dividing attention across many lesser projects. Most craftsmen, the master explained, confuse motion with progress, effort with effectiveness. They stay busy to avoid the difficult work of thinking deeply about what's truly worth creating. They produce many mediocre pieces rather than risking the challenge of creating something extraordinary.
The apprentice learned that the master's approach required courage, the courage to work differently than everyone else, to resist the pressure to look busy, and to trust that deep work would ultimately prove more valuable than shallow work. It also required wisdom to distinguish between work that merely filled time and work that created lasting value. True mastery, the master taught, comes not from doing many things quickly, but from doing important things with complete attention and highest intention. The sculptor who creates one masterpiece contributes more to the world than the one who creates 100 forgettable pieces. The most profound lesson came when the apprentice realized that the master's approach to work had transformed not just his output, but his entire experience of craftsmanship. Instead of feeling constantly rushed and pressured, the master worked with a sense of calm purpose. Instead of competing with others through speed and volume, he competed through quality and originality. Instead of measuring success by how busy he appeared, he measured it by the depth of his engagement and the significance of his contribution. Years later, when the apprentice had become a respected artisan himself, he understood that the master had taught him about much more than sculpture. He had learned a philosophy of work that prioritized depth over breadth, quality over quantity, and meaningful contribution over apparent activity. This ancient wisdom reveals a timeless truth about the relationship between busyness and productivity. The most valuable work often appears deceptively simple from the outside because it emerges from periods of deep thinking, careful preparation, and focused execution that others mistake for idleness or inefficiency. Here's what transforms everything about the relationship between busyness and productivity. Being busy is often the enemy of being productive, because busyness prevents the deep focus and strategic thinking that real productivity requires. Most people believe that productivity equals output. The more you do, the more productive you are. They measure their worth by how many emails they answer, how many meetings they attend, how many tasks they complete, and how packed their schedules appear. But this volume-based approach to productivity is exactly what keeps them trapped in cycles of frantic activity that produce impressive-looking motion, but very little meaningful progress. Let me tell you about David, a marketing executive who had built his entire professional identity around being the busiest person in his company. He was the first to arrive at the office, the last to leave, and the most responsive to every email and request. His calendar was completely packed with meetings, calls, and appointments. He prided himself on never missing a deadline and always being available when others needed help. Despite all this activity, David felt increasingly frustrated with his career progress. He was working harder than his colleagues, but wasn't receiving the recognition, promotions, and interesting opportunities he expected. His projects, while completed on time, were consistently unremarkable. His contributions, while numerous, were easily replaceable. He was indispensable for keeping things running, but invisible when it came to driving innovation or strategic thinking. David's awakening came during a 2-week vacation when he was completely disconnected from work. Upon his return, he discovered that not only had the department functioned perfectly without his constant involvement, but several projects had actually progressed more smoothly in his absence. His teammates had been forced to work more independently and strategically, without his immediate availability for every small decision. This revelation forced David to confront an uncomfortable truth. Much of his busyness had been creating work, rather than completing valuable work. His immediate availability for every request had trained others to bring him problems instead of solving them independently.
His attendance at every meeting had enabled inefficient decision-making processes. His rapid response to every email had contributed to the overall acceleration of low-value communication. When David returned from vacation, instead of immediately jumping back into his previous patterns, he implemented what he called strategic unavailability. He blocked significant portions of his calendar for deep work on important projects. He stopped attending meetings where his presence wasn't essential for decision-making. He implemented delayed email responses to discourage unnecessary communication and encourage others to solve problems independently. The transformation was dramatic. With large blocks of uninterrupted time, David was able to engage in the kind of strategic thinking and creative problem-solving that his constant busyness had previously prevented. He developed innovative marketing campaigns that caught the attention of senior leadership. He identified process improvements that saved the company significant time and money. He built stronger relationships with key stakeholders because his interactions became more intentional and valuable. This experience revealed a revolutionary insight about busyness and productivity. They operate on fundamentally different principles. Busyness rewards quantity, speed, and responsiveness. Productivity rewards quality, depth, and strategic value creation. You cannot optimize for both simultaneously because they require opposite approaches to work. Busyness keeps you on the surface of your work, constantly reacting to external demands and immediate pressures. Productivity requires you to go deep, to think strategically about what matters most, and to focus your attention on activities that create disproportionate value. Busyness feeds on urgency and immediate feedback. Productivity develops through importance and long-term impact. This insight reveals why most productivity advice fails to solve the busyness problem. Traditional productivity techniques focus on doing more things faster rather than doing fewer things better. They optimize the mechanics of busyness rather than questioning whether being busy is actually productive. True productivity often looks like laziness to people trapped in busyness addiction. The person who spends 2 hours thinking about a problem before acting may appear less productive than the person who immediately starts working, but the thoughtful approach often produces better results with less overall effort. The person who says no to most meetings may seem less engaged than the person who attends everything, but selective participation often leads to more meaningful contribution. The revolutionary aspect of this insight is that it requires you to fundamentally redefine success. Instead of measuring your worth by how busy you appear or how many things you accomplish, you begin measuring it by the quality of your thinking, the significance of your contributions, and the alignment between your activities and your most important goals. This shift is initially uncomfortable because it goes against cultural programming that equates busyness with virtue and productivity with volume. But the results speak for themselves. People who escape the busyness trap consistently achieve better outcomes with less stress, more satisfaction, and greater long-term success than those who remain addicted to constant activity. Foundation 1. Clarity. The first foundation for escaping the busyness trap is developing crystal clear understanding of what actually constitutes productive work versus what merely creates the appearance of productivity. This clarity allows you to distinguish between activities that move you toward your goals and activities that simply keep you occupied. Most people have never taken the time to consciously define what productivity means for their specific role, goals, and circumstances. They operate with vague notions inherited from cultural messaging about hard work and staying busy, without ever examining whether their definition of productivity actually serves their objectives. True clarity begins with identifying your highest leverage activities, the work that creates disproportionate value relative to the time and energy invested. These activities often require sustained focus, creative thinking, or strategic decision-making, rather than rapid task completion or immediate responsiveness to others' demands. This foundation also involves understanding the difference between urgent and important activities. Urgent activities demand immediate attention, but often contribute little to long-term success. Important activities may not have pressing deadlines, but create significant value over time. Most busyness comes from being trapped in urgency while neglecting importance. Clarity requires honest assessment of your current activities and their actual contribution to your goals. Many people discover that 80% of their busyness comes from activities that could be eliminated, delegated, or significantly reduced without any negative impact on their real productivity. As this foundation develops, decision-making becomes much easier because you have clear criteria for evaluating opportunities and requests. Activities that don't serve your definition of productive work become obvious candidates for elimination, while high-leverage activities receive the focus and attention they deserve. Foundation 2. Boundaries. The second foundation involves learning to protect your time and attention for productive work by creating clear boundaries around low-value activities and requests that contribute to busyness without advancing your goals. Boundaries aren't about being uncooperative or antisocial. They're about recognizing that your attention is a finite resource that, if not consciously directed, will be consumed by whoever or whatever demands it most loudly. Without boundaries, you default to reactive mode, constantly responding to external demands rather than working proactively on what matters most. This foundation requires developing the skill and confidence to say no to requests that don't align with your highest priorities. Most people dramatically underestimate how much others respect clear, honest boundaries, and overestimate the negative consequences of declining low-value activities. The practice of boundaries includes learning to distinguish between being helpful and being taken advantage of. True helpfulness often involves saying no to immediate requests, so you can contribute more significantly through your focused work on important projects. As this foundation strengthens, you'll find that protecting your time for productive work actually enhances your value to others. When your contributions come from focused attention on important work rather than scattered attention across numerous small tasks, people begin to seek your input on more strategic and meaningful projects. Foundation 3. Focus. The third foundation is developing the capacity for sustained, deep focus on important work, rather than fragmenting your attention across multiple activities simultaneously. This focused attention is what enables breakthrough thinking, creative problem-solving, and high-quality output. Focus has become increasingly rare in our hyper-connected world, but it's essential for productive work that creates real value. When you can concentrate completely on important projects without mental fragmentation or emotional distraction, you access levels of creativity and effectiveness that are impossible with scattered attention. This foundation requires creating both external conditions and internal disciplines that support sustained concentration. External conditions might include distraction-free work environments, protected time blocks, and clear boundaries with others about when you're available for interaction. Internal disciplines include the ability to resist the urge to multitask, to stay present with challenging work rather than seeking easier distractions, and to maintain concentration even when the work becomes difficult or uncomfortable. These skills strengthen with practice, like physical muscles. Focus also involves learning to distinguish between different types of mental work and matching your approach to the demands of each type. Creative work requires different conditions than analytical work, which requires different conditions than routine administrative tasks. As this foundation develops, you'll discover that focused work is not only more effective, but also more satisfying than busy work. The deep engagement that comes from sustained concentration creates what psychologists call flow states, periods where work feels effortless and intrinsically rewarding. Foundation 4. Intention. The fourth foundation involves approaching your work with clear intention about what you're trying to accomplish and why it matters, rather than simply staying busy for the sake of appearing productive or avoiding the discomfort of stillness. Intention means having conscious purposes that guide your choices about how to spend your time and energy. When you're clear about what you're trying to achieve and why it's important, you naturally become more selective about activities and more focused in your execution. This foundation requires regular reflection on your deeper goals and values to ensure your daily activities align with what actually matters to you. Many people stay busy partly to avoid this kind of reflection because it might reveal that their current activities don't serve their authentic priorities. Intentional work feels different from busy work because it's connected to meaningful outcomes rather than just task completion. When you understand how your current activities serve your larger purposes, even challenging work becomes energizing rather than draining. The practice of intention also involves accepting that not all time needs to be filled with activity. Sometimes the most productive thing you can do is think, reflect, or simply be still enough to notice what's actually important rather than what feels urgent.
As this foundation strengthens, your work becomes more strategic and purposeful. You begin operating from a clear sense of direction rather than just responding to external demands, which naturally reduces busyness while increasing meaningful productivity. Now that you understand the four foundations, let's explore specific strategies for breaking free from the busyness trap and developing genuine productivity that feels both effective and sustainable. Activity audit. Time tracking. For 1 week, track how you actually spend your time in 15-minute increments. Don't try to change anything during this tracking period, just observe. Most people are shocked to discover how much time goes to activities they can't even remember or that contribute nothing to their goals. Value assessment. Categorize your activities into 3 groups: high value, medium value, and low value. High value directly advances important goals. Medium value, somewhat useful but not essential. Low value, busy work that could be eliminated without negative consequences. Aim to increase high-value activities while reducing or eliminating low-value ones. Urgency versus importance matrix. Use the classic framework of categorizing activities by urgency and importance. Most busyness comes from urgent but unimportant activities that feel pressing but don't actually matter. Focus on important activities whether they feel urgent or not. Energy analysis. Notice which activities energize you versus which ones drain you, regardless of their apparent importance. Often, work that feels productive because it's busy is actually depleting your energy for more meaningful contributions. Boundary implementation. Email boundaries. Instead of checking email constantly throughout the day, establish specific times for email processing. Try checking only 2 or 3 times per day and communicating these expectations to colleagues who might expect immediate responses. Meeting audit. Review all recurring meetings and decline those where your presence doesn't add significant value or where decisions can be made without you. When you do attend meetings, come prepared and push for concrete outcomes rather than just discussion. Interruption management. Establish deep work periods when you're unavailable for non-urgent interruptions. Communicate these boundaries clearly and consistently so others learn to respect your focused work time. Request filtering. Develop criteria for evaluating requests and opportunities. Before automatically saying yes, ask, does this align with my highest priorities? What would I have to say no to in order to say yes to this?
Intentional planning. Weekly reviews. Spend time each week reviewing your priorities and planning how you'll allocate your time and attention. Use this review to identify and eliminate activities that don't serve your important goals. Daily intention setting. Begin each day by clarifying your intention for the day. What are the most important outcomes you want to achieve? How will you approach your work to maximize value creation rather than just task completion? Goal alignment. Regularly assess whether your daily activities align with your longer-term goals and values. If there's a disconnect, adjust either your activities or your goals to create better alignment. Strategic thinking time. Schedule regular periods for thinking about the bigger picture rather than just executing immediate tasks. This thinking time is essential for identifying new opportunities and avoiding the trap of staying busy with outdated priorities. Advanced strategies. Energy management. Learn to work with your natural energy rhythms rather than trying to maintain constant productivity. Schedule your most important work during your peak energy periods and save routine tasks for lower energy times. Batch processing. Group similar activities together rather than switching between different types of work throughout the day. This reduces the mental overhead of task switching and allows you to work more efficiently. Automation and delegation. Identify routine tasks that can be automated with technology or delegated to others. This frees up your attention for work that requires your unique skills and judgment. Learning investment. Regularly invest time in developing skills and knowledge that will make you more effective in the long term, even if this investment doesn't provide immediate productivity gains. As you implement these principles and break free from the busyness trap, you'll experience profound changes that extend far beyond improved work efficiency. You'll discover what it means to live productively rather than just appearing productive. Meaningful achievement. One of the most significant changes you'll notice is the shift from completing many small tasks to accomplishing fewer but more meaningful objectives. Your work will begin creating real value rather than just filling time, leading to recognition and opportunities that busy work never generates. This meaningful achievement brings intrinsic satisfaction that comes from knowing your efforts matter and contribute to something larger than immediate task completion. You'll feel genuinely productive rather than just busy. Reduce stress. Paradoxically, working less frantically often leads to feeling less stress, even when the work you're doing is more challenging. This happens because you're no longer constantly reacting to external demands while trying to juggle an impossible number of competing priorities. When you focus on fewer things with deeper attention, you can give each the consideration it deserves, leading to better results and the confidence that comes from genuine competence rather than frantic activity.
Enhanced creativity. Sustained focus on important work often leads to creative breakthroughs and innovative solutions that are impossible when your attention is constantly fragmented. Deep work allows your subconscious mind to fully engage with complex problems, often producing insights that surprise you with their elegance. This creative capacity develops because focused work creates space for the kind of non-linear thinking that generates original ideas and novel approaches to challenges. Improved relationships. Your relationships often improve when you escape the busyness trap because you can be more present and intentional in your interactions with others. Quality presence and focused attention are gifts that create deeper connections than constant availability and divided attention. You'll also find that setting boundaries around your time actually improves your relationships because people learn to make their requests of you more thoughtful and strategic. Sustainable performance. The productivity that emerges from escaping busyness is sustainable over time because it's based on working with your natural capacity rather than constantly pushing against it. You develop rhythms of engagement and renewal that maintain effectiveness without leading to burnout. This sustainability allows for continuous improvement and long-term success, rather than the boom and bust cycles that characterize busy but unproductive approaches to work. Professional growth. When your contributions become more strategic and valuable rather than just numerous, you naturally become more indispensable and recognized in your profession. Quality work creates opportunities that quantity work never can.
You'll find that escaping busyness actually accelerates your career progress because you're contributing at a higher level rather than just staying busy with routine tasks that others could easily handle. Remember that breaking free from the busyness trap isn't about working less or avoiding responsibilities. It's about working more strategically and intentionally so that your efforts create maximum value with sustainable effort. The goal is to become genuinely productive rather than just appearing busy. As you continue developing these skills, you'll discover that true productivity feels quite different from busyness. It's calmer, more focused, more satisfying, and ultimately more effective at creating the results and recognition you actually want from your work. The cultural pressure to stay busy will continue, but you'll develop the confidence and clarity to resist this pressure when it conflicts with genuine productivity. You'll become someone who creates real value rather than just impressive motion. And that distinction will transform not just your work, but your entire relationship with achievement and success.